The autumn evening was calm and quiet in a small lakeside town in Vermont. The trees around the lake had turned shades of gold, red, and orange, and the cool wind moved the leaves slowly across the wooden deck of Ethan and Claire's cozy cabin. Warm light glowed through the windows, and inside the house the smell of fresh coffee and cinnamon filled the air. It was the kind of peaceful place where people came to rest, think, and sometimes start over. Inside the living room, Ethan and Claire sat near the fireplace with their close friend Megan. The fire crackled softly, sending warm light across the wooden walls of the cabin. Outside, the night was growing darker, but inside the room felt safe and comfortable. Megan had arrived earlier that afternoon. Claire had invited her for the weekend because Megan had been going through a difficult time. It's just 6 months earlier. Megan's marriage had ended suddenly after more than 20 years. Her husband had told her he wanted a different life and left without much explanation. The divorce had shaken Megan deeply. She tried to stay strong, but loneliness followed her everywhere. Claire had known Megan since college. They had been roommates when they were both young, sharing dreams about careers, travel, and family. Back then, they believed life would be simple. They imagined steady jobs, loving marriages, and happy homes. For Claire, most of those dreams had come true. She had built a stable life with Ethan. Their marriage was not perfect, but it was strong and built on years of trust. For Megan, life had taken a different turn. She now lived alone in a small apartment in Boston. The quiet there felt heavy. Every evening after work, she returned to an empty home that once held laughter and conversation. At first, she tried to stay busy, but the silence always came back. That was why Claire had insisted she visit the cabin for a few days. "You need a break," Claire had told her over the phone. "Fresh air, quiet water, and 2 friends who care about you." Megan had agreed, though she felt unsure about leaving the city. But as soon as she arrived and saw the peaceful lake and the warm cabin, she felt a small sense of relief. Now the 3 of them sat together, talking easily. Ethan poured tea into 3 cups, while Claire passed around a small plate of cookies. She had baked earlier that day. Megan wrapped her hands around the warm mug and smiled softly. "This place is beautiful," Megan said. "I forgot how quiet the countryside can be." Ethan smiled. "That's the best part. No traffic, no noise, just the lake and the wind." They spent the first hour sharing simple stories. They talked about college memories, old road trips, and funny mistakes they had made years ago. Megan laughed more than she had in a long time. For a while, the sadness she carried seemed lighter. Claire watched her carefully. She could still see the tiredness behind Megan's smile, but the laughter was real. That made Claire feel hopeful. As the evening continued, Ethan added a few logs to the fireplace. The flames grew brighter, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Outside, the wind rustled the trees near the lake. Megan leaned back in the chair and looked at the fire. "You 2 are lucky," she said quietly. Claire looked at her. "Why do you say that?" Megan hesitated before answering. "You built a life that works," she said. "A home, a relationship, peace. I thought I had that too." Her voice softened at the end of the sentence. Ethan and Claire exchanged a quick glance. Megan stared into the fire as she continued speaking. "When the divorce happened, it felt like someone pulled the ground out from under me. One day, everything was normal. The next day, it was gone." She gave a small, tired smile. "I spent 20 years building a life with someone who suddenly decided he didn't want it anymore." Claire reached across the table and gently touched Megan's hand. "You did nothing wrong," Claire said softly. Megan shrugged. "Maybe not. But that doesn't change the fact that I'm starting over at 42. The room grew quiet. Ethan sat down again, listening carefully. Megan took a slow breath. "Everyone else seems to have their lives figured out. It's families, partners, plans. Meanwhile, I'm trying to learn how to eat dinner alone without feeling miserable." Claire squeezed her hand gently. "You're not alone," she said. Megan looked up and gave a grateful smile. "I know you're here for me, and I'm thankful." For that, Ethan leaned forward slightly. "You've always been important to us, Megan," he said. She nodded, but her eyes returned to the fire. The truth was that Megan had always been close to both of them. She had been there when Ethan and Claire first started dating. She had attended their wedding. She had celebrated birthdays and holidays with them over the years. She was not just Claire's friend anymore. She had become part of their extended life. But over the last few months, Ethan and Claire had been thinking about something more. The idea had started slowly. They both cared deeply about Megan. Watching her struggle with loneliness had been painful. At the same time, their own relationship had evolved over the years. They had become more open with each other about emotions, needs, and the possibility of living life in ways that were different from what people expected. It was not a decision they took lightly. For weeks, they had talked quietly about it when Megan was not around. Tonight, for the first time, they were thinking about sharing that idea with her. Claire took a slow breath and looked at Ethan. He gave a small nod. Then Claire turned back to Megan. "You know this house is always open to you," she said gently. Megan smiled. "I know, and I appreciate it." Claire continued speaking, choosing her words carefully. "I mean, more than just visiting for weekends." Megan tilted her head slightly. "Curious? What do you mean?" Claire paused for a moment, then continued. "Ethan and I have been thinking about how life changes as we get older. People grow, relationships change, and sometimes the old ways of living don't fit anymore." Megan listened, unsure where the conversation was going. Ethan joined in. "We've built a strong marriage," he said, "but we've also learned that love isn't always limited to just one path." Megan blinked. The idea sounded unusual, but she stayed quiet. Claire spoke again. "You've been such an important part of our lives for so long. And seeing you go through this painful time made us realize something." Megan felt her heart beat a little faster. "What did you realize?" she asked softly. Claire held her gaze. "Maybe you don't have to face the future alone." Megan frowned slightly. "I'm not sure I understand." Ethan leaned forward, speaking calmly. "What Claire means is, we've wondered if you might want to share more of life with us." The words hung in the air. Megan looked from Ethan to Claire. Her mind searched for the meaning behind what they were saying. "You mean, visit more often?" she asked. Claire shook her head gently. "No, something deeper than that." Megan felt a small wave of confusion. The room suddenly seemed quieter. The fire continued to crackle softly, but the conversation had changed direction in a way she had not expected. Claire spoke slowly. "You've always been someone we trust, someone we care about deeply. Over the years, you've been there for us in so many ways." Megan nodded. "That's what friends do." Ethan smiled gently. "Yes, but sometimes relationships grow into something more meaningful than simple friendship." Megan's eyes widened slightly as the idea began to form in her mind. She wasn't shocked, but she was surprised. "You're saying you want me to be more involved in your lives?" Claire nodded. "Yes." Megan looked down at her cup, thinking. For months she had felt invisible and forgotten. Now, suddenly 2 people she trusted were offering her a place in their life in a way she had never imagined. It was unexpected. It was confusing. But there was also something strangely comforting about it. "Why me?" Megan asked quietly. Ethan answered without hesitation. "Because we know you, because we trust you, and because we care about you." Megan looked back at the fire. Her emotions felt mixed. Part of her felt nervous. Another part felt curious. For the first time since her divorce, someone was offering her a future that did not involve being alone. Claire could see the thoughts moving across Megan's face. "You don't have to decide anything tonight," Claire said softly. "We just wanted to be honest about how we feel." Megan nodded. Slowly, "I appreciate that," she said. They continued sitting together for a while, letting the conversation settle. Eventually, the night grew late. Claire showed Megan to the guest room upstairs. The room overlooked the lake, and the moonlight reflected softly on the water outside. "Get some rest," Claire said kindly. "Tomorrow we can talk more if you want." Megan smiled faintly. "Thank you for everything." Claire hugged her gently before leaving the room. Soon the cabin became quiet. Megan lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Her mind replayed the conversation again and again. The idea Ethan and Claire had suggested was unusual, but it didn't feel wrong. In fact, the warmth and honesty in their voices made it feel sincere. Still, she wondered what it truly meant. Downstairs, Ethan and Claire sat together quietly. In the living room, the fire had burned low. Claire leaned her head against Ethan's shoulder. "Do you think we surprised her too much?" she asked softly. Ethan thought for a moment. "Maybe," he said. "But she deserves to know how much she matters to us." Claire nodded. After a short silence, Ethan spoke again in a lower voice. "Do you think she's ready to hear the whole truth yet?" Upstairs, Megan shifted slightly in bed. Through the quiet floorboards of the cabin, she heard his words. The next morning, sunlight poured through the tall windows of the cabin, reflecting off the lake with a golden shimmer. Megan woke slowly, still carrying the weight of last night's conversation in her mind. She had tried to sleep, but her thoughts kept returning to Ethan and Claire's words, the unexpected invitation. The warmth in their voices, the gentle way they had held her hand. She felt a strange mix of fear, curiosity, and hope, all tangled together like the branches of the autumn trees outside. Downstairs, Ethan was already awake. He was brewing coffee, the rich aroma filling the room, trying to keep his thoughts focused on the mundane task. But his mind wasn't on coffee. It was on Megan, on the possibility that she might accept what they had hinted at last night. Claire joined him silently, slipping her hand into his, her touch reassuring. "She didn't say no, Claire," whispered softly. "No, she didn't," Ethan replied. His voice held a quiet hope. "But she didn't say yes, either." They both knew the truth. This wasn't about forcing anything. This was about opening a door, and only Megan could decide whether she wanted to step through it. Meanwhile, Megan dressed quietly in the guest room. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. The loneliness of the past months had left marks, but she also saw something else, a spark of curiosity, desire for connection she hadn't felt in a long time. She thought about what it would mean to accept Ethan and Claire's invitation to share her life with them in a way she had never imagined. She walked downstairs slowly, her heart pounding, and found them in the kitchen. The smell of pancakes made her stomach growl softly, though she barely noticed it. Ethan smiled warmly when he saw her. Claire's expression was gentle, patient, full of understanding. "Morning," Ethan said softly. "Morning," Megan replied. She hesitated, then took a seat at the table. For a while they ate breakfast in a quiet rhythm, letting the weight of the previous night settle. The sun climbed higher, and the lake outside glimmered calm and inviting. After breakfast, Claire spoke first. "Megan, I know last night was a lot, and we didn't want to overwhelm you. But I think it's okay to talk more about it today if you want." Megan nodded slowly. She had questions. So many questions. I just don't know how this would work," she said. Her voice was small but honest. I don't want to intrude or make things weird between you two?" Ethan shook his head gently. "You wouldn't intrude. You'd be part of our life in a way that feels natural. Nothing is forced. We just want honesty and care." Claire reached across the table and squeezed Megan's hand. "We trust you, Megan. That's why we thought you might want to join us." Megan stared down at their hands, the warmth of their touch grounding her. She had been so careful in the past, guarding her heart, avoiding vulnerability. But here, with them, she felt safe. She felt like she could let go just a little. She started, then stopped. Words felt heavy. She had spent months hiding from life, avoiding change, and now everything seemed to demand a decision she wasn't sure she could make. Ethan leaned forward. Don't have to decide today. Just think about it. Take your time. We're not going anywhere. Megan nodded again. This time, her mind was more focused. She needed to understand the depth of what they were offering, the trust, the intimacy, the companionship. It wasn't just friendship. It wasn't just comfort. It was something more profound, something rare. They spent the morning walking by the lake, the crisp air filling their lungs. Megan watched the reflection of the trees in the water and realized that this weekend was giving her a chance she hadn't expected, a chance to rewrite part of her life. Claire spoke softly as they walked. Megan, life is short. And sometimes, we find people who make us feel alive in ways we didn't think were possible. We've felt that about you for years. Megan looked at her, feeling a lump form in her throat. I never thought anyone would feel that way about me again. You're more than we can put into words, Ethan said, his voice steady and warm. You've always been special. And we want to share more of our lives with you. If you want? Megan's heart raced. She knew that saying yes would change everything. She would be stepping into a new kind of relationship, one that required trust, honesty, and courage. Yet, she also knew that saying no would mean returning to the loneliness that had been her constant companion for months. By the afternoon, they returned to the cabin. The sun had lowered, casting long shadows across the deck. Megan felt a quiet resolve growing inside her. She realized that she had spent so much time hiding, so much time fearing the unknown. But the unknown now felt inviting. It was a chance to embrace life again, to open her heart, to take a step toward something she didn't fully understand, but felt deeply drawn to. They sat together in the living room again, the fire already lit to ward off the chill of the evening. Megan's hands rested in her lap, and she finally met their eyes. I'm ready to try, she said, her voice small but determined. Ethan and Claire exchanged a glance, their eyes reflecting relief and joy. You don't have to say more than that for now, Claire said softly. We'll figure everything together step by step. Megan smiled, a tear slipping down her cheek. It was a tear of release, of relief, of hope. For the first time in months, she felt that she could breathe freely, that she could let herself belong again. The evening passed with quiet laughter and gentle conversation. They shared memories, stories, and hopes for the future. Megan realized how natural it felt to be there, how her presence was not only accepted but wanted. As night fell, they stepped onto the deck, the moon reflecting. Across the still lake, Megan breathed in the crisp night air, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't known in a long time. She knew there would be challenges, moments of doubt, and times when emotions would feel complicated. But she also knew that, with Ethan and Claire, she could face those moments honestly and openly. Ethan wrapped his arm around Claire, and Claire reached for Megan's hand. The three of them stood quietly, looking at the reflection of the stars in the water. Megan felt a deep warmth in her chest. She had taken the first step into a new kind of life, one built on trust, love, and connection. And in that moment, she realized something profound. The hardest choices often lead to the most meaningful moments. She had opened her heart again. She had embraced the unknown. And in doing so, she had found a place where she truly belonged. That night, as they returned inside, Megan felt lighter than she had in months. She didn't know exactly what the future held, but she knew one thing. For the first time in a long time, she was ready to live, to love, and to be loved. The fire continued to glow softly, casting its warmth across the room. They sat together, quietly sharing the comfort of each other's presence. Megan felt a connection she had never experienced before, a bond that promised trust, friendship, and perhaps even more. And though the journey was just beginning, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them together as a team, as friends, and as something more, something deeply human and beautifully real. For Megan, the weekend had started as a simple visit. But now, as she looked at Ethan and Claire, she realized it had turned into the start of a new chapter, one that she was no longer afraid to explore. It's one that promised warmth, love, and hope in ways she had thought were lost forever. The night outside was calm, the lake reflecting the moonlight. Inside, the cabin was filled with quiet laughter, soft conversation, and the unspoken promise of shared lives. Megan finally felt like she was home. And for the first time in a long time, she believed that love could grow in unexpected ways if only people were willing to open their hearts.